We'll call tonight's meeting to order, please. Kathleen Allen.
Here.
Brian Chetney.
Here.
Tom Chapa.
Here.
Heather Del Conte.
Here.
Brandon Legault.
Here.
Linda Serino.
Here.
Samuel Tripp.
Here.
And Roomba Kawaja.
Here.
Next on the agenda, if you would join me in a moment of silence for Nancy Spillman Coppola. She was a typist over to the Oswego Middle School. And Mary Beth Schickling. She was a teacher at Pichu Park School. They have passed away, and we would like to do a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Next, to the Board of Education, would there be a reason to move to executive session?
Yes.
Reason?
Personnel matter?
Could I have a motion to move to executive session, please?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? If I could ask you to please mute and turn your camera off and dial into the phone number for executive session, please.
Lovely.
everyone. If I could have a motion to return to regular session.
Make a motion.
Second? I'm
Second,
sorry. Tom?
Brian.
Brian, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Sam, could you turn your mic off?
Mutes.
Sam, can you
Pardon
mute?
me?
Can you mute your microphone?
Me?
Sam. Thank you. At this time,
Dr.
I will-
Gulai, or go ahead, Karen.
I'm sorry. At this time, if I could get a motion to amend the agenda to add item F4, or excuse me, P4, personnel number 4. Could I have a motion?
This is Tom, and I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second. Colleen?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next on the agenda would be the superintendent's report. Dr. Gui?
Sorry about that, I'm back. I have several items tonight, as I'm sure you are surprised about. I'll go down my list. First, I wanted to also send the district's condolences to the families of Nancy Spillman.
Sam, could you mute your sound? Sam, thank you.
Okay. I wanted to reiterate the district's condolences to the family of Nancy Spillman. Kapala, she was with our district for many, many years, and Beth Serino Schickling was actually a career teacher in Oswego for at Fitzhugh Park School for her entire career. So that's important to point out. Next, there will be a need to have a special meeting of the board on May 12th to approve resolutions for budget propositions, seeker for the purchase of two 7-passenger SUVs and one full-size wheelchair. Those are the vehicles that we're proposing in the budget this year. That's down from 7 buses that we proposed before, and we decided to suspend some of those purchases this year. Also for the reestablishment of a capital reserve and also library vote. So Karen will be reaching out to the board to try to establish a quorum for Tuesday, May 12th. So she'll be reaching out to the board shortly. The next thing I wanted to point out separately, because it's attached to this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the most recent governor's executive order and the changes that come with that executive order, not only for a continuation of the school closure, but also related to some guidelines for school budget votes. We had talked about this previously, and the governor and state ed had talked about a few options prior, but in his most recent executive order, he did determine an order that all budget votes and board elections will occur on June 9th. Some of the requirements for a small city school are unlike some of the time frame requirements for other schools in the state. I sent the board a document earlier that we generated that outlines a calendar of just how tight and intense these next few weeks will be. For small city school districts, the ballot must be finalized no later than May 11th. The deadline for school boards to adopt the budget prior to the property tax cap card filing, which is required, must happen on May 21st or no later than May 21st. As you can see, this is going to be significantly challenging for particularly Fulton, Oswego, Auburn, Ithaca, because we don't anticipate the final budget number from the governor until May 15th. So essentially, we're going to have 4 days to complete the budget between the 15th and the 19th, which is when our next scheduled board meeting will be, because it makes perfect sense for the board to adopt the budget on the 19th rather than meet on the 19th and then again on the 21st. But we'll talk more about that later. Military ballots for small city schools must be mailed on May 26th. We would need to have our budget hearing on June 2nd, and then we would have to immediately mail out our notices. So now let's talk just for a little bit about some other changes that came with the executive order from the governor. As you all know, and was communicated, it's on our website and was also communicated today to all parents and staff, that the anticipated extended school closure in New York State for all public schools and state universities is for the end of the year. Budget vote that I gave you and sent to the board in a handout illustrates our responsibilities relative to that timeline. He also indicated that by May 15th, he would make a decision about summer school. So principals are now starting to create and submit to me, as by my request from Sunday, plans for having staff and students come to schools, recognizing our social distancing and other health and safety guidelines in order to pick up essential materials, instructional materials for the rest of the year, and any student personal belongings. For elementary schools, teachers will be coming in to close their classrooms, and at the same time, they will be bagging up student materials, labeling them, and then a schedule will be in place for parents to report to the 5 elementary schools on a given time to pick up their students' materials. In grades 7 through 12, principals are submitting plans to me and will be communicating with families a staggered schedule under social distancing guidelines for students to empty their phys ed lockers and their regular lockers to obtain any important materials that they hadn't already gathered in the first 2 weeks. As I mentioned before, a robocall was made today on school closure, and that announcement talked about the impact, the social emotional impact of this closure, particularly on our graduating seniors. There are a lot of plans that are being made currently by the high school. One will be a cap and gown pickup event that's being planned by class advisors and Mr. Wallace. And all 9 component school districts are now planning for graduation ceremonies that will be very special, but certainly different. And those plans will be rolled out in the coming weeks. As you know, there's a virtual National Honor Society induction. I believe it's Friday, and I think board members were invited to attend that. There also are still some hanging questions. One is about summer school. Another burning question really right now is because, as you know from a previous executive order, the governor suspended spring break, therefore extending our 180-day school calendar to 185 days. So there is some question about what the end of the year might look like. What would be the last day of instruction or essential learning? So there are still some things that are pending that we will continue to communicate to parents. So I did want to talk a little bit about phase 3 of our essential learning. There was an extensive robocall that was made last week, as well as a corresponding document that was emailed to parents and staff about phase 3 of extended essential learning, which is largely remote. You know that we did a technology needs survey, and the analysis of that survey indicated the number of actual laptop computers, Chromebooks that needed to be distributed to students whose families indicated that they did not have the technology necessary to move into remote learning. We have distributed hundreds of Chromebooks over the last few weeks to students who are in need of a device in order to respond to the remote learning guidelines. One thing that I really need to point out to parents, we had very little feedback from negative feedback from parents in the first 6 weeks of our enrichment and review materials portal on the main page of our website. I have shared regularly my concerns over the last 6 or 7 weeks about moving to phase 3, which is more intense remote electronic learning. We have received significant feedback from parents over the last few days and staff that this is challenging, and we knew it would be challenging. The challenges associated with just having multiple kids in a family, trying to do remote learning at multiple grade levels, maybe elementary student, a middle school or a high school, dad's at home trying to work remotely on his job, limitations associated with Wi-Fi capability. This is a really challenging time, and we knew it would be. But the message I want to send to parents and students, and I shared those feelings last week in the Tori and Dean show, that none of this is designed to be overwhelming for families or students. No student should be overwhelmed by the expectations to engage with their teachers remotely or to get assignments completed. We're asking that students do the best they can and balance the learning opportunities that have been laid out for them with the realities that are in their individual homes. So students and parents, please don't be overwhelmed by this. The next portion of the superintendent's report is a budget presentation. As the board knows, we had a confidential budget presentation at our last board meeting. And the reason it was confidential was that I have a responsibility to share significant details with the Board of Education because so many things have changed relative to the budget for 2020. And any time that you talk about large amounts of money or the reduction of your budget that's significant, you have to start talking about really essential programs and employees. And in an effort to not create hysteria, I'm sharing a lot of information for our audience. I'm sharing a lot of information that's quite detailed with the Board of Education, but we will not talk in specificity about details because what we're rolling out to the Board of Education in the last presentation as well as the presentation today are options for the board to consider once we finally have a very specific budget number, which we don't anticipate before May 15th. So I'm going to just talk about a few of the slides in the PowerPoint that was sent to the board earlier, so that the public does start to get a sense of how challenging this particular budget is, not only for Oswego, but for every public school in Central New York and New York State. For those of you that have been watching Governor Cuomo's updates daily, know that he has talked significantly about reductions in state school aid. I have talked publicly several times before about the fact that for the first time in recent history, the legislative school aid run was smaller than the governor's run. So on slide 3 for the Board of Education who may have that open or are looking at it, it illustrates the difference between the 1920 budget and the original 2021 proposed budget. We have a gap between our anticipated revenues and the required expenditures of $1.6 million. That number reflects the difference between all the monies that the district expects to generate through pilots, through taxation, through other revenues, and what the cost of operating our district in a similar fashion to last year would look like. So that would be $1.6 million and some change. The gap resulted from a decrease in state aid and reductions in some other revenues. So not only did the second state aid run not increase, but it actually was less than the original governor's run. Another thing to point out is that the governor has talked significantly about 3 possible windows of time where he may ask for a variance from the New York State Legislature in order to bring additional funds back to the state. The state shortfall, budget shortfall, has been caused by the extreme costs of the coronavirus on the state and other matters that have impacted the state's ability to build their budget. The governor at one point indicated that he may in fact call 20% of school aid back from public schools. He stepped back on that number a few days later and talked about 10%. Some indications that we have indicate that he likely or may ask for an additional 8 to 12% of New York State public school aid back on May 15th. So the slide that we propose for you shows that in addition to the $1.6 million gap, natural gap that we have between our revenues and anticipated expenditures, if the governor asks for a refund of 12% of our state aid, that's an additional $3.9 million. We're hoping that that doesn't occur. We don't really know what the number is. I believe it'll be somewhere between 8 and 12%. So we thought for the sake of illustrating the impact of a take back like that we would show you what the 12% number looked like. So the $1.6 million original gap, coupled with the possibility of a 12% pullback from the governor, would make our current year's gap for 2021 school year $5.5 million. You'll remember that in the budget of 2016, when the district was in fiscal stress, our gap was $5.6 million. So the number is similar. The difference between this budget crisis, if you would call it that, and the crisis of 2016 is that all public schools in New York State will be experiencing the same types of hardships, largely dependent on their wealth ratio or their how dependent they are on state aid. The next slide shows that the expenditures, the anticipated expenditures, and the revised budget. If we were to had to reduce our current budget, proposed budget for 2021, which was really a 2% rollover budget, from 89.2 million minus the 5.5, our new budget number would be 83,729,996. That 2021 budget would be smaller than our 17-18 budget. So in the presentation on April 23rd, you were given potential cuts just to consider of $2.9 million. In the worst case scenario, we would have to cut an additional $2,627,000 from the budget to get to that 5.5. So additional possible reductions are on the following slides that I won't review for the public, but I wanted the board to know what the work that we've been doing over the last week, and that is digging into our budget line by line and framing that with mandated programs. So any of those things that we've listed are not recommendations. Those are considerations for you because all of those line items in the budget are not attached to mandated programs or personnel. So it's as all-inclusive as we could provide for you. It's also important to point out that in the worst case scenario, even with these suggested considerations for you or reductions in the budget, coupled with the considerations we gave you 2 weeks ago, still did not reduce the gap completely. So you can see that there are subtotals on those pages of $34,000, $213,000, $173,000, $274,000, with a total menu of considerations provided to the board today of an additional $1.6 million. So you can see that the work it's a heavy lift. Now, it's also important to point out, as you're cross-referencing the PowerPoint from 2 weeks ago with the considerations that we're providing for you tonight, there might be some duplication, because in some cases, a few weeks ago, we gave you maybe a bucket of something, and now we're giving you an all-in number. So, we still might have a 300 and some $1,000 gap if we were to apply all of those reductions to the budget. But the number is not exact because there is some overlying duplication in those lists. So what do we need to do next? So we have generated all the background work by listing all of the considerations, many of them extreme, of course, that the board may have to entertain. If the news from Governor Cuomo is not good on May 15th, I would say because we need to prepare and adopt our budget within 7 days of him rolling out that number. I think we do need to be prepared to have a budget workshop where we can at least wrap our brain around what it is that we need to do, get the opinions of board members about what their priority items might be. But what makes this more challenging than so many other budget years is we can list a menu of options for the board to consider in reductions. And then we can make choices about what types of reductions we think would have the least impact on teaching and learning. But my fear is that this is going to become an all-inclusive list that we may have to consider. I'm hoping for the best, but we're planning to be prepared because our turnaround time for the finalization and adoption of a budget will be very short. Nancy, did you want to add anything to that?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Any questions that I can answer from board members about this? I know you haven't had a lot of time to spill over, but if you cross-reference this to the line item budget that I sent to you at the end of last week that was requested, you can find these numbers. I think it's important to point out too that some of these might be program reductions or eliminations, so they're a larger bucket of money. And in some of those line items, where if you look at them in your line by line item budget that we provided for you, you might see that maybe there was $6,000 allocated for a particular budget line, but we felt that we could still conduct the business of the district, things that were required by maybe shaving $2,000 or $3,000 off that particular line. So some are all inclusive of the total budget line number, and some are a portion of that. Sam, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think you said that the governor was going to give us some definite numbers, probably around the 15th.
Yes,
And we have to have, the board has to adopt the budget the 21st.
correct.
So we've got maybe 6 days.
Yes.
So when do you plan to have this budget workshop?
Well, if the board wanted to have a budget workshop just to kind of talk about the reality of all of this in advance of the 15th, we can certainly do that. I don't think it'll generate a lot of, it's not going to be as productive as if we have, we may want to have a special board workshop. The 15th, I believe, is a Friday. I'm looking at my calendar right now. That's why I'm looking down. May 15th is a Friday. Nancy and I will work on that budget that weekend. Maybe the board should come together for a workshop on the 18th. We have a board meeting on the 19th. It's too bad the 15th doesn't fall on a Monday.
Yeah.
But
Well, I for one have not suggestions, but some considerations to help, and I assume other board members do too. So I think the sooner we get together and discuss this, since there is such a short time frame, the better.
yeah,
People want to,
Indeed, I think a Sunday night meeting would be a good time. I know folks are kind of settling in, but you're going to be working on the budget over the weekend. Sunday would give us some time to talk about some things, and then Monday would be another day that I would have another one, Sunday and Monday, and that puts us in good shape for our meeting on the 19th.
Yeah, I don't know how other board members feel about a Sunday meeting. It's certainly not gonna impact Nancy and my weekend, but I think that probably makes some sense because there's a requirement for the board to adopt the budget on the 21st, and we have a board meeting on the 19th. If there's a way that the board could have a workshop on that Sunday evening, that gives Nancy and I Monday to finalize the budget and to get the required documents prepared. However, I think if there's if any board member has a recommendation or suggestion or an idea, send it to us now. We can talk about it further at that workshop, but don't hold on to it. Send it to us. If it's something that you don't see that we thought of.
Well, I do right now because I was looking at this line by line. I didn't go through the entire thing, but I went through several. There's a lot of questions that I have about it that I don't understand what those amounts, why they would have been budgeted so high. Like the retreats, like the board retreat being 2,500. We didn't spend 2,500 on a board retreat last year. We had Chris Todd come in and we had breakfast pizza.
Right.
I mean, was it laced with gold?
It wasn't $2,500 worth.
No,
But
so
remember, there was
don't
that,
budget that much for it.
yeah.
No conferences. A couple years ago, I was talking to Sam Tripp about this. A couple years ago, and we did it for a couple years in a row, where there was absolutely zero conferences. Nobody went to a conference because we just didn't have the money for it.
Yeah.
I was looking at some of these budget lines. Some of these buildings have $25,000 budget lines for furniture. No new furniture this year.
Well, I think if you look at the document that we gave you today and the document that we gave you 2 weeks ago, you're going to see that that's all gone.
Well, I didn't see. No, I saw partial, some of those amounts, but not the entire amounts. I'm talking the full amounts. Another one that there was budgeted $25,000 for a retreat. What? Can you explain that one?
That was all taken out.
15 to bring it down to 10, but I guess I just don't understand why 25,000 would be budgeted for retreat to begin with.
Are you looking for an answer, or are you just bringing up examples?
No, that one I'm looking for an answer. I don't understand why $25,000 is necessary for a retreat.
I don't know, but right now it's at zero.
I think
There's also money that's always scheduled for school board members to travel to conferences. It hasn't been used in my time. And as far as the board,
we took that out years ago too, that we stopped doing that. I mean,
we took a lot of things out in the 2016 budget, but since 2016, some things have come back into the budget. The reality right now is it's all out.
I would venture to guess that a lot of it came back in from when we did that heavy lifting years ago, and it was extremely painful. A lot of that stuff got added back in. And it's very disappointing to know that we have to go so deep again with some of this stuff. And some of this stuff, when I'm looking at the expenditures, what we've spent so far, I realize we're not at the end of the fiscal year, but when I'm looking at those expenditures and then what the proposed budgets are, there's a lot of room in there that you can pull down back on those budgets if your expenditures like this. You know, I mean, if you're budgeting for $7,000, but your expenditures are only $900 that year, why are we budgeting $7,000? So there's. Go ahead.
I think Kathleen brings up a lot of good points, and so I'm wondering if maybe instead of waiting until the 15th, maybe we do our initial workshop ahead of the game so that we can fully understand the budget as it exists and we can ask all of our questions, so that when we come around to actually making decisions, we already understand where we're coming from. I don't think we have to wait till, what I'm saying is I don't think we have to wait till the 15th and then rush to workshops. I think we have an initial workshop where we ask all of our questions, and then we can have a Monday workshop where we actually finalize the things that are decided.
Right.
The other
The
thing,
point I was trying to make is, there's nothing left in the budget.
right, I mean,
We're
it's
talking
kind of,
about why a number was what it was, when now it's 0. That reduction allowed us to get to the gap.
Right, but that's not reflected on this line by line, even with those ones that you preliminary gave us.
Right.
There were some things that said minus, like that $25,000 retreat line said minus 15, but there was still 10,000 in there. And that's what I'm saying. Take the 10,000 out too.
It's gone, Kathleen. It's everything 0. It's
But
gone. And I
Dean,
think the point, I think maybe what you're forgetting is that when we sent you the line by line item on Friday, that was as of that day.
Right.
Dean, what I think
If we spent 5 days since then,
Kathleen or Dean, I think what Kathleen and Heather are trying to point out is that rather than just send you what we're thinking with no communication to have questions that we have, burning questions answered, that we need to meet earlier so that we can have these open discussions and not just sending it and letting things occur that we have no background on. So I think
you can have a budget hearing whenever you want it. Heather, when do you
well, I
want
think that's
when
what
do you
we're
want to do that? Yeah,
saying. I think
I
that's
don't
what we're
disagree with that.
Yeah, not a hearing, a workshop.
I proposed that. I said you could have a budget workshop before the 15th.
Yep.
Or you could wait till the final number comes.
Yeah.
But then it's much more hurried then. I'm just trying to point out that it's not going to be a lot of picking and choosing because there's nothing left.
And I think if we understand the inputs prior to getting to that final number, then our discussion on Monday will be a lot easier because everybody will be on the same page in terms of what our revenues and expenditures are, where they come from, what our options are.
Yep. So you just have to determine what date you want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do people have a feeling about that? Do we want to schedule it later or schedule it now?
We're talking, what, today's the 5th, correct?
Today's the 5th.
Cinco de Mayo, yes.
Mm-hmm. Friday?
No.
So, I'm sorry, what did you just say no to? Friday? Okay, it's okay.
Brandon has suggested a Sunday evening. How about this coming Sunday evening to get started? I agree, Heather. I think we need more than 1 or 2 sit downs.
But why don't we look to next week then? I think people's weekends are somewhat perished still.
Yeah, Brandon was suggesting Sunday the 17th. I think you might want to do it
This
earlier
Sunday.
than that.
Why don't we do this Sunday?
No, this Sunday's Mother's Day. I'm not doing it on Mother's Day.
I'm saying we have next week. Can we somehow schedule like one of?
Could I suggest the 12th when we were going to have a special meeting to approve the resolutions for the vote?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Would that be okay?
Works for me.
I'll send everyone an email.
Yeah.
That sounds perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I think people should also not tentatively, but definitely have that Monday as well scheduled.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
Monday the what?
Monday, I think the 18th.
Monday the 18th?
Yeah.
Right. Isn't that the Monday before our board meeting?
Yes.
Mhm.
And that's for a workshop also?
Yes.
Any other questions?
Are we talking
Yeah.
5 o'clock for those?
Would 5 o'clock be fine for everyone?
Yeah, I'm just saying the 18th, I'm booked all day long up until then, so.
Okay. 5 o'clock then?
That works.
Yeah. Can I just throw a question out to Nancy? Nancy, I was going through that line by line, and I noticed that many of the retirees, not just the teachers, but the civil service, people that have announced as retirees, PAs, those salaries are, those positions and salaries are still in the budget. Now, I realize that when we replace them, there'll be some breakage. But we're probably going to come down to a point where we may not replace all of them. Is there any way we can get a little better handle on how much monies we can save with those?
We have, in the first presentation, we have that addressed by people who may or may not be replaced. When we roll the salaries into the budget, we always roll it so that at that point in time, those people who were in the budget at that time remain in there. It's too difficult for us to keep going in and pulling people out and moving people as a new person comes in. So there is some breakage in the budget. We use that in case of emergencies. We never transfer out of payroll lines so that we do have a cushion in the budget.
But if we were to say we're not going to replace that individual, then you'd have some hard numbers to work with.
Right, and we do have that, that is in your first presentation, where we do say these positions, if this situation were to occur, these positions would not be replaced.
Okay, one more question. Those numbers that are in that line by line, do those include fringe or are those base salary?
That's base salary. Fringe is later down in the budget in the 900.
Well, if you did replace that person, there'd be some savings in the fringes also because they wouldn't qualify for the same benefits that a long-term person would.
And in the presentations that we sent you last week and this week, when you see a position, it includes an estimate for fringe.
Okay, what's the budget line number for the fringe? Will that fringe all be in one district line or will?
No, you'll see a line for unemployment, TRS, ERS, health insurance, dental insurance, all of those things.
So it's not broken out individually? It's
No.
all in one lump.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Karen, the budget workshops, those will be live so people can watch at home, correct?
Correct. Next, we'll move to, I'm sorry.
I mean, how can folks have any kind of input?
They would have input at the budget hearing. I talked to Jamie about having, the board would be doing a Google Meets, and we would have a dedicated phone line for folks as if they were coming to the mic. You know how we usually, when we have our budget hearing, people can come to the mic and ask questions. We'll set that up so they can do that.
In the meantime, Dean, if we have any other ideas, you want us to send them to you or to Nancy or whom? Or both?
Both.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
All righty.
All right,
Next
thank
one.
you. I just want to thank Dean and Nancy for the work you've done. I know you've spent a lot of hours on the budget, so we do appreciate it, and we're looking forward to coming alongside and helping.
Okay.
Next is the consent agenda with 2 items, minutes of the regular meeting of April 23rd, 2020, and the Special Education Board report, May 5th, 2020. Could I have a motion? Move it.
Second.
Second?
Sand.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Next, we'll move to curriculum with Carrie Class.
I only have one item this evening. It is the 2020-21 LEA Oswego Grant Award for the Teacher Resources and Computer Training Centers that the board approved that 2020-21, the LEA Grant Award for the Teaching Resources and Training Centers for the amount of $254,517. It is truly a grant for a Central New York Teacher Center, and Oswego will be the lead or the local educational agency for the grant, which means that the Teacher Center will become part of Oswego in terms of planning for how the money then is distributed across all of Central New York. It's not all going to reside in Central New York. The Teacher Center has supported us in the past with other projects, such as they brought Ross Green here for one of our PD offerings. So the woman that works for the teacher center has really truly helped Oswego and partnered with them and opened a lot of her PD up to all of Central New York, but it's based right in Oswego.
This, if I could say something, this is a pretty big deal. This is the Central New York Oswego County Teacher Center that services all teachers across Central New York and in particular Oswego County. And now the Oswego City School District is the LEA, the sponsor of the Teacher Center. The director, Tammy Anderson, is from Oswego, and they have been a great friend to Oswego and have supported so many educational initiatives that we've done around trauma-informed classroom and so many other things. And really what we become is their sponsor. And I think it's great for Oswego.
Where will it be based, Dean?
They have an office. They don't require any technology or any office space in Oswego at all in our district. She will have an oswego.org email. But short of that, I think it'd be safe to say that Oswego School District has been a favorite of the Oswego Central New York and Oswego County Teacher Center for quite some time. So we've had a strong partnership with them for a long, long time.
Could I have a motion, please?
Can I ask one more question before we vote on that?
Yes.
Dean, what kind of, I mean, if this is for the upcoming year, I know a lot of times with grants, we get the money for a year and then the following year it falls onto us.
Yeah.
If we're looking at this budget, I can't help but think, what are our costs going to be?
There's no cost to the district. The only cost that might exist with a relationship with like this is if the director had some type of, retired out of Oswego and there were legacy costs. That's not the case. There are no legacy costs for this employee. But more importantly, this is an annually renewed LEA agreement. So we, at the end of each year, we decide whether you want to continue to be the host school district for the Central New York Teacher Center or not. There's no long-term commitment to this.
So it would be another grant next year that would
Yes,
potentially
they're
come to us.
fully grant funded. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And they need an LEA in order to have a legitimate school agency that supports them and calls them theirs.
Could I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is personnel with Dr. Sweeney.
Number 1, professional staff recommendations, resignations. Brian Bowden, music teacher, FLS and KPS. Christine Castilla, reading teacher, Riley. Michelle Colagiovanni, elementary teacher, KPS. Frederick Donabella, teaching assistant, OMS. And Nicole Sams, teaching assistant, Minetto.
Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Number 2, professional staff recommendations, leaves of absence. All are serving in a second tenure area for the coming school year. Allison Anderson, English teacher, OMS. Bridget Oyer, teaching assistant, OHS. Carolyn Dem, elementary teacher, FLS. Ashley Jaquin, elementary teacher, Riley. Stephanie Kropp, elementary teacher, KPS. Joshua Lurch, elementary teacher, FPS. Rory Malone, social studies teacher at the middle school. And Laura Riley, teaching assistant at KPS.
Motion? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Wait, I have a question.
Kathleen?
The middle school one, I know you've got one assistant principal that's on a grant, correct?
Correct.
So where does that leave us with this one?
Are you talking about Rory?
Yeah.
His leave of absence for the coming school year, his position is paid under our status money for the middle school. So that'll be posted as a regular sub social studies position for the middle school for the coming school year. Is that what you were asking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kathleen, he's fully funded under the grant,
Okay. Thank
and
you.
it's year by year. When
Yeah.
when they come off of accountability or the grant money is rescinded, then he goes back to the classroom.
Okay. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
3, support staff recommendation, permanent appointment for Sarah Gates, teacher aide part-time at Riley. She has completed her probationary period.
Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And personnel number 4, 3020A charges. Whereas the superintendent of schools has preferred charges against the employee named in executive session pursuant to sections 3020 and 3020A of the New York State Education Law. And whereas the Board of Education has determined by a vote of a majority of all the members of the board that probable cause exists for the charge preferred against said employee by the superintendent of schools. Be it resolved that should the employee named in executive session either waive his or her right to a hearing or be found guilty of the charges after a hearing, the Board of Education shall seek his or her termination from service in the Oswego City School District.
This resolution will need a roll call, so I will do that now. Kathleen Allen?
Don't you have to make a motion?
No.
Not for a roll call.
Okay. Yes.
Brian Chetney?
Yes.
Tom Chapa?
Yes.
Heather Del Conte?
Yes.
Brandon Legault?
Yes.
Linda Sereno?
Yes.
Samuel Tripp?
Yes.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Next is finance with Nancy Squires.
Number 1 is a donation of $5,000 from Novellus for our food service program to support schools, school feeding. Do you want me to just continue and group them as we, or?
No, read each one, please,
Okay.
because these are important. 1 and 2, please, Nancy.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank, you're going to see more and more of these donations start to come through. We've been receiving generous donations from businesses. I've talked an awful lot about Seas Farm Market. Certainly Eagle Beverage has been doing tremendous things for us. Novellus made a very generous donation. And I know you haven't voted on number 1 yet, but I'll talk about number 2 and then I can be quiet. Number 2 is important because this is a member of our community, an individual member of our community, Dr. Karen Stanley, who is a physician in our community. She was so moved and impressed by what she saw the district doing with our feeding program that she reached out to me and asked if she could make a personal donation to our food service department. And she literally met me in the parking lot of the high school on one of our food preparation days and handed me a check. So she needs to really be recognized. So thank you to Novellus and to Dr. Stanley.
If I could have
Move it.
second,
I'll second it.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? I do want to let you know, Nancy, is this here with me? She finished with the.
Number 3 is a budget transfer for a total of $15,730. That is for computer and software for remote learning.
Motion?
Move it.
I'll make the motion. It's hard to hear you, Karen, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Second? Can you hear me now?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
4 is a contract for Glad Security, and this is for our access control equipment and software for our capital project in the amount of $26,244.
Move it.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
5 is a contract with Facilities Commissioning and Technical Service. This is a contract that is required by New York State Building Code on construction projects with mechanical equipment work. And it is a third-party review for $35,300 plus $2,500 for reimbursables.
Move it.
Second.
I'm sorry.
Just so you know, there's a pause because I've asked Karen to redo 4A, which is the carry resolution. It should indicate a motion and a second, and then the roll call. Karen, could you redo that one?
Are we in the middle of this one motion though?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know, because I stepped away.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to finish
Number
this motion and then we'll go back to that one. Absolutely.
Number was Sam, and we need a second.
Second.
And that was
Kathleen.
Discussion?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Going to move back to personnel, item 4. If I could have a motion.
4A.
Or
Four-
A.
4A.
4A.
Move it.
Second.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, second, please.
Hey, Karen, if you could move over where Nancy is, because we can hear Nancy just fine, we can't hear you.
Just sit on her lap.
That's the mic.
Okay, how's that? Is that
Good.
better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
you
I
should-
will move-
Kathleen is a first, Tom second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
None.
Okay, now we'll
And
roll.
now I will do a roll call vote. Kathleen Allen,
Yes.
Brian Chetney,
Yes.
Tom Chapa,
Yes.
Heather Del Conte,
Yes.
Brandon Legault,
Yes.
Linda Sereno,
Yes.
Samuel Tripp,
Yes.
all in favor. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you.
We'll move back with Nancy Squires.
This is a contract with CME Associates. It's required by New York State Building Code for a third-party review of testing, and that is for $70,000.
Could I have a motion, please?
I'll
Move
make
it.
the motion.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
7 is a contract with Plumley Engineering. This is for work on the permit for the floodplain elevation for the capital project in the amount of $4,750.
Motion, please.
I'll make the
Move
motion.
it.
Second. I have Tom for the first. Can I have a second? Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And the last one is number 8, and it is to amend the food service budget so that they can make use of the generous donations, the $8,000 from that you approved previously.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second? Tom? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next on the agenda is the student representative. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've been to a meeting, and I didn't really expect the next meeting to be like this. But of course, a lot has been going on for students lately. First, I'd like to mention Dr. Ui mentioned earlier the induction ceremony for NHS that we will be having online. We thought that it would be nice to still recognize the students because, of course, they've worked so hard to get into NHS, and we'd really appreciate to see all of you there. So seniors, of course, the class of 2020 has really been struggling during this time. Everything has been so unexpected and everybody's uncertain as to what's happening, for example, at graduation. But I know a lot of students are definitely want a graduation, even if it's delayed or in the summer, they're still willing to come and have a ceremony to get themselves recognized for all of the work they've done over the past years. We have been sharing our college decisions, even if we can't do that in school. For example, on the Instagram, we've been sharing the students, what college they're going to, what they plan on doing in the future. And of course, we wish we could be in person and sharing our plans with our teachers and saying our official goodbyes, but I think we have been adjusting. And with online classes, we can still see our teachers, even if it's not in person.
Irma, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Just getting feedback from the class of 2020. You mentioned that they're open to alternatives, but did I hear you say they'd rather have something postponed as opposed to something as an alternative?
A lot of the people I've talked to want an in-person graduation and are willing to come over the summer. I don't think I can speak for the whole class, but a lot of people that I have spoken to personally have said that.
Okay, and if it had to be extended even beyond that, would that still be the case based on the people you've talked to, or you're not sure?
I think most of the people probably would be okay with that. They just really want that ceremony where they can shake your hand and get that certificate.
Completely understandable.
Yeah.
We appreciate your input for sure,
Thank you.
as always.
And I thank you guys for all the work you've been doing, trying to make this the best situation for us.
Oh, that's so nice.
And a big congratulations to Ruma. She's headed to Brown, if you did not know, right? Am I right?
Yes, I know. Thank you.
Exciting.
Good job.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Next on the agenda is items from the board. Would any board members have any items tonight?
Yes, I do. I have some questions. Dean, we talked earlier about the Google Chromes, the online learning, those types of things. There's been some question, or if you give some clarification, I think K through 2 is not participating in Google Classroom or online stuff. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Correct. I'll have Carrie address it because Carrie was the main architect of the elementary essential learning guidelines. She's the one that worked with teachers to develop the lesson packets and principles. But you're right. What you said is right. There's a difference between K1 and 2.6. Carrie?
When we started to dive into how it would look going online, I pulled together the elementary principals and we had a discussion on the platforms and how to utilize them, knowing that K2 students don't have the capability of just jumping onto a computer on their own and logging in. We recognize that parents had to be part of the essential piece of getting students into the online learning platform. So we had the discussion of how would that look? How would that add stress to our families that are already probably stressed in some way? And does it cause family to kind of not to unlevel the playing field when it comes to families that might have parents that work during the day, or parents that don't have the same resources of being able to do the online learning. So as we talked that through, we drew a line in the sand of K2 would be not appropriate to ask students to be getting into a program that they need guidance for. So we really tried to make it as simple as possible with the K2 parents and students. We recognize that 3 through 6, those students have already been through Google Classroom in school and understand the platform and wouldn't have to have a parent necessarily help log them in or navigate through Google Classroom. We recognize our K2 folks little bunnies haven't had as much practice with Google Classroom too. So we didn't want to have that added stress when we just hit the hit it running, hit the road running with this.
So just to add to that, I think there's some, there's some teachers, there's some parents that have K through 2 students out there that are missing what the others are having, right? I agree with the log on and expecting a K through 2 to be able to actually log on to the computer. But I think there's parents that have to be involved into this process anyway. There's parents that are engaged into this, whether they're in 3rd grade or they're in 12th grade, because I sat here with my daughter yesterday and went and logged on and did her math homework with her. So it's not as simple as just logging on. I think what they're missing is, the K through 2 being able to see their teachers, maybe getting a little dressed up to go to a class for a couple hours type thing. They're missing out on what maybe in the household they're seeing their brothers and sisters doing, and the teachers are also missing out on being able to engage with their students as well.
And yeah, we did talk about that, but we also recognize there are students that you're putting that we feel there would be added stress to those families that can't participate. We wanted to make it, as the state said in their regulations, it's going to be equal, that all continuity of learning can reach all. With the offline learning packets, we can get the learning into kids' hands. With the other piece that you're talking about, the social piece, we can't replicate that at K2 without having a parent in the room or a parent supporting. And again, it's we want everyone.
Are you suggesting a 3rd grader can?
The 3rd graders have had more practice with the Google platform than the K2 have.
Brandon, I think it's important to point out too that we've encouraged the teachers, and I see so many creative ways that teachers are engaging with their classes, and even special area teachers that are creating videos and recorded messages and are sending them to their students. Because I think what I hear you say is some of those K1 kids are missing that interaction that we're having right now. With their teacher.
It's the K1, K2, not just, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Kindergarten second, because the Google starts at grade 3, not 2. So you got K1, K2, you got K1, K2 that aren't participating in the social aspect of this. So I just hope that we're not restricting our teachers to present things, put videos out there to engage them. I hope that we're not discouraging them just because they can't get on social media. And maybe we can look at it a little bit differently as we keep going through this. I know this is all new, but there is some people, again, parents and teachers that have reached out to me specifically and said, my K through 2s aren't engaged. We're not there. We're not doing what the 3 through 12s doing, which is evident.
Yeah, they're not. It's a different platform. Encourage the teachers certainly should be sharing those concerns with their principals. I've gotten feedback from just one primary parent that was hopeful that they would get more. Quite frankly, most of the feedback we've gotten over the last couple of days from parents and teachers is that the online computer-based learning is overwhelming to them.
And we have had parents that have made contact, and the principals have had conversations. And once we frame it and how we recognize that not all students can participate, most parents have backed down and they're recognizing what we're trying to say in terms of we want all our families to be able to participate in something that with the social learning. But if you are excluding anybody, and our data shows that only 70% of students that did have the opportunity, that were open to the opportunity of engaging, only 70% of the students even were able to participate. We're cutting 30% of our students out, and that's a high number.
So that leads me into great, thank you very much for that, Carrie.
Sure.
The next thing that leads me into is, are we tracking our participation rates? Is there any way to track our participation rates? Because I'm assuming at some point in time, the state's gonna say, how many people are involved?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, could you share that with us at some point? Doesn't
Well,
have to.
it just started, so.
Yep, no, I get it.
Yep.
And I only have one more, and then I'm gonna actually mute my thing here.
I thought you'd be hungry by now.
Thanks. So there's some rumblings out there, and there's some reality to different people, different organizations, including the city, that wanted to do something for those seniors, putting flags up. I know the sensitivity around the photo portion of it. Billy has mentioned that he would like to possibly create a flag with just their names onto it, put it up and down 104. I hope that the administration would jump on board with that. I can't see that there's any legal infringements because we post it in the paper anyway. But if we could get a list out to Billy, he would appreciate it. Whether that's Matt, or if he wants to send it to me, I can pass it on, or just directly contact him, Dean, if you can. But we're trying as a community, and again, I'm very sensitive to this because Kate is a senior this year, and we're just trying to put out as much as we can to support them and help them understand that we feel for them, that they're not getting, and they're kind of getting robbed by all the great things seniors have to do.
Brandon, I've noticed out in Red Creek that they have had a photo, and they have them all lined up as posters going into their high school. It's absolutely beautiful. Every senior has a huge poster with their picture on it, and they're like if you were running for the board, and
Right.
they're stuck in the ground, and oh my gosh, it's awesome.
I agree. There a lot of districts are starting to do things like that. We had actually reached out to, I'll give you one good example of a partnership that's happening right now is we had reached out to our PR folks at BOCES to create yard signs for all of our seniors. And while they were doing the design, Buck Boosters reached out to me through Julie Chetney and said, hey, we'd like to buy senior yard signs for our seniors.
Yeah.
Would you guys support that and help us with the distribution? And my response was, yeah, thank you for buying those, because that was going to cost us a bundle of money. And so they have the signs ordered, and we're going to help them with distribution. So Julie's been working initially with me and now with Pat on that. Anybody that has any suggestion or would like to do something can reach out to the superintendent's office.
Yeah, Bill, I'm telling you right now, the mayor is looking for some information.
Okay.
If you could reach out to him, he'd appreciate it. He's just waiting on it. It's no cost to the district. He has somebody that is helping him in the city along with the cost. And it's kind of already in the works, but we wanted to include the district and get you involved with him. So if you could reach out to him with a list and talk to him about it, because there was some things about wanting to use the buck sign, and is it legal to use the buck sign if the city's doing it? Those types of things. Didn't want anybody in trouble.
That's a good question. I haven't heard from the city. I had an about anything like that, but I did have a parent. We get a lot of parents that have suggestions.
Yep.
I had one particular parent came to our attention that wanted to create signs and put them on the bridge with student pictures.
Yeah.
And I said, no, we can't use student pictures. That was the last I heard of it.
Okay.
But obviously, and we're planning a lot of similar things, not only through the class advisors, but through the district. Now that we know that this extended closure goes to the end of the year, now we can suddenly start finalizing the plans for what these sorts of things look like.
Dean, are you saying we can't have posters with student pictures on it?
You could, but you'd have to get individual permission from each student, each graduating student's parent
Well, that shouldn't
in
be.
order to have their likeness on a sign.
Yeah, I think, I don't think that.
And I think, like when the discussion came up about the signs down Bridge Street, people completely understand, right? Not all seniors like their pictures either. Some kids might not like it, right? And they may not want it. So I think the name thing is good. If, like I said, if you can just reach out to Billy, he's waiting for your phone call. He's got some things in the works, or I'll have him contact you, whatever that is.
Yeah, have him call. I didn't know he was waiting for my phone call. I never knew that he hasn't reached out to us.
Yep. So I'll make that.
We're happy to support anything like that. But I wanted to go to something you said, Brandon, which you made a very good point. So many parents are excited about creating opportunities for the kids to have the experiences that you and I and we all missed. But what we're trying to do and what the class advisors are trying to do is make sure that the things that we're doing to honor the students they want. Right.
They've got to want it too.
Right? They don't want to be. We don't want our seniors to say, "Oh my God, they hung my picture on the bridge."
Well, we have a senior right here. Why don't we hear from her?
Okay, yeah.
Roma, what do you think about these ideas? And because I do think I heard from you to prioritize a ceremony, but what about all these other things in addition, if it wasn't an and/or?
I think a lot of people do appreciate the support and recognition everybody's been giving the class of 2020. Me and a lot of my friends would definitely enjoy that, but I know some seniors are definitely against having their pictures up. So that's a big thing. I've heard some people say like, "Oh, I don't want a sign with my picture up," or "I don't want people to see like my face or something." But I think with names and all that, that would be really nice. I think everybody would appreciate that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So Dean, I have one last thing. I'm aware that the Speedway has also offered up the Speedway for graduation as well. It's been pretty cool. I've seen on different things where like they've taken a Speedway and you're able to park your car around, watch the ceremony on a Jumbotron type thing. So I do know that Johnny Parisi has reached out and said that the Speedway would be a viable option as well if the college isn't available.
Yeah, last week, the Oswego County Superintendent meet remotely once or twice a week, and we're trying to stay lockstep in the types of honoring and planning for graduation, so that there's some similarity from district to district. It doesn't become a contest of, oh, I had a Skywriter, oh, I had a Speedway, oh, I did it at, you know what I mean? So we haven't had a follow-up meeting yet this week about those issues since the governor issued the schools closed for the rest of the year. But we're looking at all options, and the high school senior class advisors and Pat Wallace will lead the charge on that, and I'll give them any guidance that I have from the county chiefs.
You know, some schools are doing them at drive-ins also.
That was the other one that somebody suggested.
Yeah. I mean, and even in the NISBA emails that we get, there was an article about some schools, other schools doing it at the drive-in also.
Yeah.
I don't know if the drive-in's big enough, but
we're unique to
But again, I'll go back to, if I could just go back to Roma, again, feedback from the students, is an alternative ceremony like that, or is it more a postponed ceremony that would be more attractive? I think it's important for us to get feedback from the seniors themselves.
Mm-hmm. I think a big thing is that people don't want an online ceremony. They definitely want in person. They want their parents to see it, their family to see it. I think at like the Speedway or something, if we were able to be in person like that, I think that would be better for a lot of people.
Okay.
Any other items from the board? At this time, would the board need to move to executive session?
We do.
Reason?
Personnel?
Would there be a need for a vote after executive session?
No.
Okay. Could I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second,
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You may move to executive session.